Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this much awaited program on the Bombay Samachar. The Bombay Samachar enters its 200th year this in July, and the Asiatic thought that it is best to commemorate this event by means of a public lecture by Burgess Desai on 200 years of Mumbai Na Samachar. The town hall where the Asiatic Society is housed was the intellectual hub for 19th century Bombay. Besides housing the Bombay branch of the Royal Asiatic Society, it was a witness for public debates, academic lectures, and university convocations of the Bombay University. To allow this intellectual churning in a colonial state, a robust and free press was very important. And within the vicinity of the town hall stands the red building which houses the Bombay Samachar Press, from where this newspaper is printed. Yet another connect is that opposite the town hall are lovely shady Horniman Gardens and the Horniman Circle. And the Asiatic Society's present address is Syed Abdullah Brelvi Marg. Both Horniman and Syed Abdullah Brelvi were editors of the Bombay Chronicle, which was printed in the Bombay Samachar Press. And when the Bombay Chronicle shut down, the entire collection was sent to the Asiatic Library. And today, Asiatic Library is one of the only two places in Bombay which has copies of the Bombay Chronicle. We are very proud of our collection, and lots of people come to refer to the Bombay Chronicle. A brief introduction now to the speaker for today, Burgess Desai, an alumnus of the Bharda New High School and later Elphinstone College. He is a noted lawyer, writer, columnist, and an ordained priest. So a man wearing several hats. After he retired from a prestigious law firm, he is now into private legal practice. Chronicling the lives of Parsis, he has written two books, O Those Parsis and The Babajis. And in his columns in both the Bombay Samachar and Parsiana, he has mainly focused on Parsi culture. Burgess's association with the Bombay Samachar runs long. His father was the editor of Bombay Samachar in the 60s and 70s, and Burgess himself was a journalist with the Bombay Samachar for some time. And hence, who better than Burgess to talk about the 200 years of this glorious history of the Bombay Samachar? In the small write-up that Burgess had sent us, he stated that his lecture is dedicated to Mr. Mancheji Kama, who was the chairman of the Bombay Samachar and a life member of the Asiatic Society. He passed away in early July. Now, participants, Burgess Desai for you. Welcome.
After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the infamous East India Company, a joint stock company, which was perhaps the world's first mercenary quasi-sovereign, ruled over large parts of the country. The company harbored lumpen elements and soldiers of fortune. There was virtually no rule of law, and none of the finer British traditions had yet taken root. Corruption was rampant, as highlighted during the trial to impeach Warren Hastings in London. Nevertheless, the 100-year-old company rule shook up a moribund country and led to social reform and progress, including the introduction of railways, postal services, telegraphy, civil service, a justice system, and English education. Great change was in the air, knowledge spelled prosperity, and the time was therefore ripe for newspapers to emerge in India. More than 100 years before the first newspaper was printed in India, in 1670, a Parsi or a Gujarati called Bhimji Parekh imported the first printing press into the country. The Parsi Prakash, whose records are available with the offices of the Bombay Parsi Panchayat, records that one Rustam Kershas had the honor of printing the first English calendar in India in 1780, the year in which Indian journalism commenced. On 29 January of that year, the first issue of the first newspaper in India, called the Bengal Gazette, was published. The Gazette's editor and publisher was a colorful Irishman called James Augustus Hickey, who was a lawyer's clerk, a surgeon, a failed trader jailed for non-payment of his debts. It was from this jail that he began his printing business. Although its masthead stated that it was a weekly political and commercial paper open to all parties and influenced by none, Hickey made the wildest allegations against all and sundry, including that the Governor-General Warren Hastings' wife had received a bribe from a potential competitor, and almost entirely out of context that the Governor-General himself suffered from erectile dysfunction. He also accused the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at Fort William of corruption. Threatened, beaten up, sued, and tried multiple times for libel, Hickey was jailed again. He obstinately continued to publish the newspaper from his favorite jail and slandered many more until it was finally closed down on 30th March 1782, the first victim of infant mortality, which would plague most of its successors. One would have expected the first Indian newspaper to be dull, restrained, sedate, and sober. Instead, it was loud, sensational, alarmist, and controversial. Hickey's disastrous foray had many lessons, though, for those who followed. Although they were much more restrained than this reckless pioneer, most of them were as short-lived. In 1820, there were 3. A decade later, a British parliamentary return of 1830 records that there was only 1, namely the Calcutta Government Gazette. In Bombay in 1791, there were 2 fairly respectable newspapers, both of them lasted for nearly half a century, including the Bombay Courier, predecessor of the Times of India, which in 1797, interestingly, published advertisements in 6 languages, including Marathi, Kannada, Urdu, and Portuguese, apart from English and Gujarati. The first vernacular Indian newspaper, Samachar Darpan, was started by European missionaries in Bengal with the stated objective of converting natives to Christianity. The first genuinely native paper, as the expression then was, Shambad Kaumudi, was started by 2 Bengali gentlemen, Dutt and Bandyopadhyay, in 1821. It was bilingual in Bengali and English, advocated socio-religious reform, and survived for 30 years. Just 7 months from the launch of the Kaumudi, the Mumbai Na Samachar, as it was christened, was published on Monday, 1st July, 1822. The extra H after the S in Samachar was not a typo. That was the way in which Gujarati was spoken and written there. Samachar thus made its debut 42 years after the advent of Indian journalism. In the intervening period, many newspapers were published and perished. Many others never took off from the drawing board. When the 19th century commenced, Bombay, part of the dowry received by Charles II from the miffed Portuguese in 1661, had already emerged as the commercial hub of India. The leading newspapers of those days, the Calcutta Chronicle and the Indian Gazette, were Bengal-centric. Parsis and Gujaratis, the preeminent trading communities of Western India, strongly desired a Gujarati newspaper giving news relevant to Bombay. It required a visionary to identify this great need and respond. That visionary was Fardunji Marazban, born at Surat in 1787 in a Parsi priestly family of modest means but great learning. Young Fardunji underwent training to become an ordained priest. His father and uncles were scholars in Avesta and Middle Persia. The precocious lad was eager to locate to Bombay. After a failed escapade at 11, he finally managed to do so in 1805. He was then mentored by an extraordinary personage called Mullah Firoz in Bombay, who was a leading Oriental scholar, poet, philosopher, and theologian, and who had penned the then popular George Nama on the lines of the Shahnameh. The extolled sovereign George III later suffered from permanent mental illness, possibly a bipolar disorder. Mullah Firoz took Fardunji as his ward and student and was instrumental in shaping the latter's vision and life mission. Fardunji was certainly a serial entrepreneur. He was a practicing priest, a bookbinder, printer, publisher, author, astrologer, translator, trader of cartons containing soldiers' hats, shipper, manager of a private postal and courier company, exporter, and scholar. In 1814, he owned a printing press, which was the famous Stanhope printing press of the early 19th century, preserved in the British Museum in London. He published several books, many authored by himself. His entrepreneurial instincts finally zeroed in on this great need of Parsis and Gujaratis in Bombay to have a Gujarati newspaper. He possessed the required resources to start one, including owning a printing press. Both he and his mentor Mullah Firoz were accomplished astrologers and perhaps hit upon that propitious moment under the right combination of planets to commence a venture which would last for centuries. After all, he published the Almanac or the Panchang, which Mumbai Samachar continues to publish till date, some 200 years later. Due to the high cost of production in 1814, Fardunji's Panchang was sold at an astronomical price of rupees 2 per copy, which was the same price at which it was sold in 1972, some 150 years later. Despite this astonishingly high cost, Fardunji's Panchang sold many copies. For the first decade of its existence, Samachar was a weekly published every Monday. In 1832, it experimented as a daily throughout that year, but in the absence of sufficient news, despite desperate sounding editorial entreaties to the readers to send in any material, however banal, it was compelled to become a bi-weekly and was published on Sundays and Wednesdays for 20 more years. After 33 years from its debut, that is in 1855, it finally became a daily. In 1832, it was renamed the Bombay Samachar. In 1855, as Mumbai Samachar, much before the Shiv Sena Supremo Bal Thackeray managed to rename officially Bombay as Mumbai. During the first 6 months of its appearance, the issue of the Samachar consisted of 3 small quarto sheets, 10 inches by 8 inches, and a supplement of another half sheet, aggregating to 14 pages of printed matter. However, 8 years later, in its issue of 13th December 1830, we find as many as 20 pages. However, when it became a daily, naturally its size shrunk to a single page. Marazban spent a huge sum of rupees 11,000 to prepare new Gujarati typefaces, which indicates that his business activities must have been quite profitable. In the early part of the 19th century, Indian newspapers were made up mostly of insipid extracts from European papers about European wars and diplomacy and little about local happenings. An Anglo-Indian journalist, Stockeller, records in his memoirs as follows. We found these newspapers comprised almost entirely of selections from English papers and an occasional law report or about a ball and a supper or a laudatory review of an amateur performance. Only once did a man called Mr. Fair, editor of the Bombay Gazette, ventured to insert an article personally offensive to the government recorder, Sir Edward West, and paid the bitter penalty of being deprived of his license and then deported to England. Sounds familiar. Against this somber backdrop, the first two issues of the Samachar contained a longish and almost startling editorial on the liberty of the press. After tracing the history of press freedom in England, Fardunji Marzban went on to assert that a free press was critical in disseminating news as well as knowledge and for formulating sound opinion. The editor concluded by stating that England is so great because it is free and because it gives the right of free speech within due bounds. These words penned some 200 years ago sound remarkable. On the first page of the first issue of the Samachar, there were advertisements about things lost and found, as well as the proposed sale of immovable property, all relating to Parsis. The inside pages contained info about government and Supreme Court appointments, powers of attorney, arrival and departure of Europeans from Bombay, noting of European and Indian deaths, ships loading and unloading in the Bombay harbour. 6 columns devoted to news taken, without any acknowledgement of course, from the India Gazette and the Calcutta Chronicle relating to Calcutta. Similarly, a column of Madras News and London News from the Government Gazette of Madras. And finally, 10 lines devoted to news from Canton in China, including the prices of opium. Surprisingly, the first few issues did not contain much news about Bombay. However, what is most remarkable is the editorial in the first issue titled Ourselves, which gives valuable insight into what motivated Marzban to start this newspaper. What sounds at first blush a sycophantic tone towards the British rulers was Fardunji's genuine admiration. The following passage from the first editorial is significant. We recommend our readers to refrain from consigning to the waste paper basket or from otherwise destroying the copies of this newspaper after reading them. Our subscribers will do well to preserve and file the issue of this paper and to have them bound in a volume at the end of every year, because such volumes will in future be useful to themselves and more so to posterity. About the use of the language, he said, we propose consequently to use such Gujarati in our columns as may be equally intelligible both to Parsis and Gujaratis. The Gujarati used by the Samachar from its very inception was not what is popularly termed as Parsi Gujarati, which is an admixture of Gujarati with Pahlavi and later Persian. The Parsis were possibly required to give up Pahlavi and Persian for the local language as a condition of obtaining refuge in Western India. For considerations of national security, the Hindu rulers perhaps wanted to know what the strange foreign refugees were up to. Nor was it the highly Sanskritized Gujarati understood by few Gujaratis except scholars. The policy of this newspaper has always been to write in a language understood by the common man, the so-called man on the Clapham omnibus or the Virar fast, as you please, an objective uppermost in the mind of its near clairvoyant founder 2 centuries ago. Always and almost eerily ahead of his times, and that too by a mile, Fardunji soon published in the Samachar a series of articles containing political, geographical, historical, statistical reports on various Indian provinces in the form of special supplements, including about their geography and topography. Considering his own and his mentor Mullah Firoz's great interest in astrology, the newspaper regularly printed articles on astrology by several Pandits and Shastris, a trend which has continued up to date. Even today, regular readers of the Samachar first devour the daily Panchang, providing details of the day according to the Samvat, Hijri, Parsi and Jain calendars, including the auspicious timings of the day, as also the constellation of the zodiac, consulted by many to know the birth sign of a newborn. Coming back to Fardunji's times, poetry and philosophy also occasionally found a place. However, gradually the leading content of his newspaper was commercial and trade information, and it soon came to be known and is known till date as a merchant's newspaper. Samachar's progressive and liberal instincts were nourished in no small measure by the then Governor-General Marquis of Hastings, a truly liberal statesman who espoused the freedom of the press. No wonder Samachar's first editorial expounded so fluently on the subject. However, acute discomfort was already beginning to be felt at the proliferation of newspapers run by the natives, and the same was being voiced in conservative English circles. Some of these rulers were apprehensive about the effects of a so-called free native press upon the native soldiery. However, contemporary historians have recorded that vernacular newspapers had no impact whatsoever on the native soldiers and was not one of the causes of the Great Indian Mutiny of 1857. As far as the Samachar was concerned, there's an interesting article in the Calcutta Review of April 1898. Samachar never gave any trouble to the government. Even in its worst days, it never proved mischievous. Though a prominent critic of the government, it is eminently fair-minded and loyal, as is recognized by the government itself in its reports. The British rulers encouraged Fardunji in his enterprise. Mount Stuart Elphinstone, after whom is named the Elphinstone College in Bombay, and whose pronunciation in Gujarati Fardunji could not get right for ages, subscribed to the Samachar by generously contributing an annual subscription for 50 copies at ₹24 per copy. Although Samachar's monthly subscription was an astoundingly high ₹2, within days of its publication, there were more than 150 subscribers, including 14 Englishmen, 8 Hindus, 6 Muslims, and 67 Parsis. The same article in the Calcutta Review noted, government has no reason to be dissatisfied with its protege, which, however, was never cringing in its tone. This character the paper has always kept up, of sobriety and independence of view, leading to neither extreme, but maintaining the safe and dignified via media, which has been many times noted and lauded by the public as well as in the blue books of the government. Fardunji's newspaper and his printing press near the King's Barracks in the fort area of Bombay became very popular, and his networking amongst the city's elite became extensive. His trading activities too turned increasingly profitable. He moved into a large house near Grant Road and constructed a road at his cost to ensure access during the monsoon, and even acquired a private ghoda gadi or horse-driven carriage. Fardunji Marezban had arrived. However, like the way of all flesh, difficulties were not far behind. In 1826-27, a bitter controversy erupted in the Parsi community over the Zoroastrian calendar between the Shahenshai and the Kadmi factions. Fardunji supported the Kadmi faction to which he belonged and had to endure the animosity of the economically powerful Shahenshais, who threatened him with dire consequences if he dared to publish certain unpalatable facts in the Samachar. In response, Fardunji reportedly whisked off the padan or the mouth guard used by Zoroastrian priests while praying from the folds of his white turban and defiantly said, "Do not think that I will starve even if you bring about my economic ruin. I can always go back to be a practicing priest once again." Such threats spurred the journalist in Fardunji to continue a more vigorous onslaught. He now had many enemies, some masquerading as friends. They began to plot his financial downfall. In 1832, just 10 years after the date of the Samachar's first publication, misfortune struck Fardunji. He had bought a ship called Brig Hindustan for plying the China trade, which was lost, causing a financial disaster for its owner. The sugar market's sudden collapse added to his woes. His opponents seized this opportunity, and most of his personal assets, including his residential house and the printing press, were attached by creditors. Facing bankruptcy and civil prison as a judgment debtor, he first moved from Bombay to Vasai and finally had to flee to the Portuguese settlement of Damman outside the British jurisdiction to escape his creditors. In the same year, translations published by him in the Samachar in Gujarati of Zoroastrian prayers caused another raging controversy. Parsi Orthodox circles deemed the translation as blasphemous and sacrilegious. Fardunji Marzban, a genius much ahead of his times, remained in Damman for the rest of his life, tried to set up another printing press at the insistence of the Portuguese governor, practiced Oriental medicine during his stay, a skill which he had acquired as an apprentice to a famous medicine man in Bharuch, thereby adding one more trade and profession to his long resume. Even during his exile, he managed to translate, write, and publish several books, mostly on Zoroastrianism. Fardunji Marzban, after successfully fulfilling the purpose of his incarnation, died a heartbroken and impoverished man in 1847. He was just 59. Fardunji in exile had decided to pass the baton to one of his trusted lieutenants, Temulji Rustamji Mirza. Marzban penned a rather poignant farewell editorial, incorporating advice to his successor editor to stay away from religious controversy. Mirza, appointed editor at just 24, was a soft-spoken man from a learned family. He had considerable emotional intelligence and was therefore preferred over much older men. He would, however, be the editor only for 2.5 years. Like Keats at 26, Mirza succumbed to tuberculosis, records the obituary published in the issue of the Samachar dated 17th July 1834. In 1833, when Mirza was still the editor, Fardunji's printing press was auctioned to satisfy the claims of his creditors, and one Meherji family were the auction purchasers. This finds mention in a Gujarati book called Mumbai No Bahar, penned by a popular author called Ratanji Faramji Vacha. Samachar would remain in the ownership and control of this Meherji family for 32 years up to 1866. Successive editors of this newspaper died very young. Mirza at 26, Kharshedji Ormazji at 37, Meherji at 28, Kawasji Mama at 32. Until Mama died in 1841, all the owners, editors, printers, and publishers of this newspaper were Parsis. Mama was, however, succeeded as editor by two Maharashtrian brothers, Janardhan and Vinayak Vasudev, who were fluent in Gujarati, like the Maharashtrian scholars of those times. Later, Janardhan would be the first Indian to be appointed as an acting judge of what was then known as the Bombay Supreme Court. His brother Vinayak was appointed as an Oriental translator, again a high position. In the absence of any material available about these brothers, and considering that they had a judicial background and were editors for less than a year between them, it is reasonable to infer that their appointment was temporary in nature. My informed guess is that considering that the Meherji family were auction purchasers of the printing press, there must have been some litigation challenging their ownership, and pending the resolution of such litigation, the elder Janardhan, who was obviously a lawyer and later became a judge, was appointed by a court or authority to administer the newspaper in the meanwhile. And subsequently, the litigation must have culminated in favor of the Meherji family, as they did resume control shortly thereafter. Barring the Janardhan brothers, every editor, owner, printer, and publisher of this newspaper was a Parsi from 1822 to 1961, when for the first time a non-Parsi, Shanti Kumar Bhatt, was appointed as the editor of the Sunday Samachar. The editors of the Daily Samachar, however, continued to be Parsis as late as 2001, when the Samachar at once broke the glass ceiling and also its Parsi-only bias by appointing a Gujarati woman journalist, Miss Pinky Dalal, as the editor-in-chief. She was succeeded by a young journalist, Nilesh Dave, its present editor. It may safely be concluded that the long-standing tradition of appointing only Parsi editors appears to be over. Retracing to 1845, the Samachar had a series of editors. Most of them were also the owner, printer, and publisher. Quite a few were alumni of the Elphinstone College. Occasionally, a famous educationalist like Sorabji Bengali, a pioneer of women's education, deemed it an honor to be the Samachar's editor for a brief while. The Samachar, however, sunk into an abyss under the Meherji family's rule and nearly choked to death. In 1866, its circulation was hardly 200 copies, and stagnation had set in. However, in June 1866, it was rescued in the nick of time, and its fortunes changed for the better under the ownership of the Minoche Homji family. For the first time, we noticed that in its issues starting from December 9, 1866, the appearance of the so-called press line, the bottom line on the last page of a newspaper which stated that Manekji Barjorji Minoche Homji was also its owner, printer and publisher. Under his able stewardship, the circulation of the Samachar accelerated to 3,200 copies. His son Kaikhashru further strengthened the paper during a stint of 23 years. When he died at 57, his obituary in the Parsi Prakash of 5th January 1928 records that amongst his other achievements, like his father, he too was proficient in singing Hindustani classical music. Under this father and son duo, for more than half a century, the Samachar experienced a true dawn. Under the management of the Minoche family, the Samachar had an outstanding editor in Meherji Madan, who rose from being a proofreader to a reporter to an assistant editor, and finally the editor of the newspaper. For the first time, there was a clear demarcation between the owner and the editor of this newspaper. Madan was also perhaps one of the first Indian vernacular investigative journalists. He went to Junagadh to investigate communal riots, and his free and frank report was published despite several threats to desist from doing so. Not only the British government, but leading personalities like Sir Firoz Shah Mehta, as well as the Indian Merchants' Chamber, relied heavily on the accuracy and the opinions of Madan as expressed in the columns of the Samachar. Without any doubt, he was the first professional editor of this newspaper, whose contribution to its growing popularity and credibility was immense. The circulation of the newspaper now soared to 4,000 copies. The First World War broke out in 1914, and the last descendant of the Minoche Homji family in poor health sold the newspaper as well as the printing press to a colorful cotton merchant called Nauroji Belgamwala. The war caused great volatility and turmoil in the Indian markets, and the readers of the Samachar anxiously awaited its arrival early morning to know the news about the latest developments. So far, all the owners and editors of this newspaper were orthodox, turbaned Parsi Zoroastrians who deemed it sacrilegious to move bareheaded. Belgamwala would be the first to do so. Belgamwala speculated on the last digit of the price of American cotton on the London exchange, dabbled in the stock market and gambled at the Mahalakshmi racecourse, but he also had great empathy for the Indian National Congress, and one of his best friends was a close associate of Mahatma Gandhi called Barjorji Bharucha, who advised him to buy the Samachar as well as the English language Bombay Chronicle, which was then run by the Sobtani brothers, and turned these newspapers into advocates for the independence struggle. He appointed an experienced journalist who had risen from the ranks called Sorabji Kapadia as the editor of the Samachar. Under Belgamwala's ownership from 1921 to 33, the Samachar was a propagandist for the independence movement. In April 1919, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre occurred, followed by Gandhi's successful non-cooperation movement in 1920 and the civil disobedience movement in 1927. These were heady times, and the Samachar as well as the Chronicle fired on all cylinders on behalf of the freedom fighters. Belgamwala, however, was a maverick who enjoyed the limelight and was more interested in playing a leading role in Gandhi's civil disobedience movement rather than managing the newspapers that he had bought. The financial management of the Samachar steadily deteriorated, and soon it owed lakhs of rupees to its creditors. Not wanting its profitable cotton trade to be impacted by the financial misfortunes of the Samachar, he agreed with one of his major creditors who remained unpaid for the newsprint paper supplied that in extinguishment of his debts, the creditor could take over both the newspapers. The year was 1933 and the creditor was Manchevji Nasarwanji Kama, a leading merchant from one of the aristocratic families of Bombay. This deal between Belgamwala and Kama was brokered by the grandson of Dadabhai Navroji. Dadabhai had earlier worked as a manager of Kama's trading firm's London branch. After the sale, Belgamwala went back to his cotton business, prospered, got disillusioned with the communal riots following the partition of India, and somewhat surprisingly migrated to Karachi. While on a visit to his favorite Bombay at the age of 63, at the Bombay Presidency Radio Club at Colaba, he had a cardiac episode and collapsed over a cup of tea. Some benign gods have always looked after the Samachar. Destiny thus delivered the Samachar and the Bombay Chronicle to the Kama family, who have been the longest owners ever of this newspaper for nearly 90 years now. In those initial days, however, Kama's transition from a successful merchant to a newspaper owner was not easy. Every day he continued to discover a new hole in the Samachar's balance sheet. Wages were in arrears, workers threatened to strike, advertisers wanted unsustainable discounts. Early one morning when Kama went to office, he was shocked to find the entire staff sitting on the road outside the office building, which had been sealed by the court for non-payment of rent to the landlord. To add fuel to fire, those were the days of the Great Depression, when markets around the globe had crashed and unemployment had soared to astronomical levels. The Indian economy was, of course, in the doldrums. Spartan and upright, Manchevji Kama was known in the trade to honor every promise. He would neither exploit nor be exploited. He never defaulted on a single payment, and he soon restored the financial health of the newspaper. Fair, honest, and just in his approach, he was also a disciplinarian. Senior employees brazenly flouting his orders were instantly sacked. Succumbing to blackmail of any kind, regardless of the economic consequences, was simply not there in Kama's DNA. When out of the blue, one of Samachar's main operators of the printing press threatened to quit unless his salary was double, Kama asked him to leave immediately, went on the shop floor, and personally repaired the machine with the help of others. When the lucrative cine advertisers boycotted the Samachar for its new strict no credit policy, he refused to negotiate. While he paid wages above the market, he was hyper-allergic to trade unions. In the late 50s, journalists and staff of Samachar's sister concern, the Bombay Chronicle, founded in 1879, initiated industrial action demanding unrealistic wages. Sanguine in the belief that the Chronicle was a highly profitable and prestigious venture, and Kama would have to ultimately relent. The journalistic world was stunned when overnight Kama paid full closure compensation and permanently closed down the Chronicle. Obviously, this did not make him very popular with the Bombay Union of Journalists, who published a booklet called the Kama Combine, in which his so-called capitalist style of functioning was rather unfairly assailed. The ever-smiling Kama, though, remained unperturbed. A few years later, in May 1963, an aggressive trade unionist R.J. Mehta led the Samachar's workers to strike for 72 days, which ended with the Kamas offering to pay much more than the wages demanded by the strikers themselves, provided that they quit Mehta's union. The workers left the union. Post that episode, the newspaper has enjoyed excellent industrial relations. An interesting aside of the strike was that it was initially called off after 60 days and the workers resumed work. The editorial in the Samachar stated that the workers had unconditionally withdrawn their strike. The workers objected to this word unconditional. There was a stalemate at midnight and the presses were stopped. Many urged the Kamas to concede. Neither Kama nor his editor would budge, and the strike went on for another 12 days when the workers finally dropped their insistence. None can ever interfere with the contents of the editorial, asserted the Kamas. In 1935, Kama had purchased for rupees 15,000 from a Parsi aristocratic family the now famous Red House building at the Horniman Circle in the fort to house the Samachar's offices as also the printing press, which continues till date. The red brick building of the Samachar is a landmark heritage structure nearly 200 years old. Many decades later, in 2006, the Bombay Municipal Corporation would unanimously resolve to name the nearby road as the Bombay Samachar Marg. The Red House has the honor to stand on the road named after Syed Abdullah Brelvi and faces a garden named after Benjamin Horniman, both of whom were legendary editors of the Bombay Chronicle and were sensitively nurtured by the Kamas. In 1939, the Second World War broke out, and another golden period for newspapers began. Sometime in the early 40s, after finishing their graduation, Kama's sons, Nasarwanji or Naushir and Rustamji or Rusi, joined their astute father, with whom they would share lifelong and amazing chemistry. Though not an engineer, Naushir would often be found underneath the giant German-made Gauss printing machines, curing a technical problem. Rusi was a much-loved public relations man who managed advertising and public interaction. The formidable trio functioned as a single unit until the patriarch passed away at 87 in 1982. Along with the financial mess, Kama had inherited from Belgamwala the veteran editor Sorabji Kapadia, a soft-spoken, low-profile conservative Parsi who always wore a black cap, sported a walrus moustache, and seldom lifted his hard-working head from the editorial desk. He would be the Samachar's longest-serving editor for 4 decades, from 1921 to 1961. During his stewardship, Mahatma Gandhi, Patel, and Nehru often dropped in at the Samachar's office to meet Belgamwala and then Kama to garner support for the freedom movement and the Indian National Congress. Jawaharlal Nehru and Kama struck a personal friendship over the years, and when the former's wife Kamla was recuperating in a Swiss sanatorium attended to by their daughter Indira, Nehru requested Kama during the latter's visits to Switzerland to look after Indira's well-being. During the emergency imposed by Indira in 1975, the Samachar was the only leading newspaper in Bombay in whose offices no member of the censor board was stationed, even though the Samachar was no apologist for the emergency. As a matter of fact, sometime in 1970-71, the Samachar bitterly opposed the introduction of a bill in Parliament by the Indira Gandhi government to delink ownership of newspapers from management and editorial control, which bill was a brazen attempt to nationalize newspapers by the back door and fortunately was dropped under the pressure of Western opinion, but was a clear indicator of Indira Gandhi's growing authoritarian tendencies. In April 1961, when Sorabji Kapadia died in harness, the Kamas appointed 41-year-old Minu Desai as the editor of the Daily Samachar and the 39-year-old Shanti Kumar Bhatt, referred earlier, as the editor of the Sunday Samachar. Desai, an accidental Parsi from Navsari, was a first-generation Bombayite who had little in common with his upper-class Parsi predecessors. A participant in Gandhi's Quit India movement, he was a Gujarati poet, playwright, and critic, and a lifelong Gandhian who penned 28 books, all in Gujarati. Bhatt too authored books in English and Gujarati. Both were professional journalists since a young age. They professionalized the editorial setup and ensured that the Samachar's language was purged of any remaining Parsi remnants. The Gujarati, so to say, was Brahminized. The patriarch of the Kama family, though, was unhappy about the use of any difficult words. He once summoned the sports editor to tell him that Suvarna Chandrak for gold medal was too difficult for the common reader to fathom, and he should say Sonano Chand. When Kennedy was assassinated, Kama argued with the editor that instead of using the word Hatya, he ought to have said Khun, whereupon the irate editor is reported to have told him that if the patriarch had been murdered, the correct word would have indeed been Khun, but for Kennedy, The appropriate word was Hatya. Under Desai and Bhatt, the Samachar circulation soared from 62,000 in 1962 to a career best 1,48,000 in 1975 when Desai at 55 suddenly succumbed to cancer. Jahan Baksh Daruwala, a retired development officer with the LIC and a part-time journalist with the Parsi community daily, the Jame Jamshed, incidentally, the second oldest continuing newspaper in Asia, founded by none other than Fardunji Marasban's descendant. Daruwala was plucked out of oblivion and appointed as the editor, while Bhatt had to be content being the Sunday editor. The Parsi tradition had been followed once again. Under Daruwala, the Samachar vigorously espoused several civic causes, including Parsi and Bora socio-religious reform. In 1977, Manchi, the elder son of Naushir, who was a namesake of the patriarch, joined the clan along with Melli, son of Rusi, and to whom the speaker owes gratitude for narrating several unknown facts about the Kama family and the Samachar. Hormusji, younger son of Naushir, joined in the mid-80s, who was later appointed as chairman of the Press Trust of India. Melli was on the committee of the Indian Eastern Newspapers Society. Manchi Kama, who passed away only a few weeks ago, was of a scholarly disposition, headed the K.R. Kama Oriental Institute with great distinction, and played a stellar role as a trustee of several charities and public institutions, including the Bombay Parsi Panchayat, and had great deal to contribute to the Samachar in some very challenging times to come. As a matter of policy, 3 generations of the Kama family has never interfered with editorial independence. To appoint an editor was their prerogative. Once appointed, how to run the newspaper was the editor's prerogative. Samachar has never been affiliated or biased in favor of any political party or community or Indian corporate group or business house or industry. Advertisers, however large, receive no special favors. The editorial undertone was always subdued and never strident or virulent. Successive governments held the Samachar in great affection. The newspaper may not be known for investigative journalism or many sensational scoops. Its credibility was, however, so great that readers believed that whatever was published in its columns was the gospel. If you are not sure of the authenticity of your source, you will not print, was the diktat to its young journalists. The Samachar was always in the forefront in times of great public distress. Whether it was the 1962 Indo-China's war, or the famine in Kutch, or the Koyna Dam earthquake, or the devastating floods in Surat, the Samachar's fervent and emotional appeals to its readers resulted in a flood of money pouring in, a tribute to its credibility and impeccable integrity. Mumbai Samachar townships to rehabilitate the victims of these natural disasters were often set up in Gujarat in coordination with the Ramakrishna Mission. Until the 1990s, the Samachar was in an enviable position as having the largest readership of all Gujarati newspapers published from Bombay. And Eveninger Janmabhoomi was not much of competition. However, with the advent of the internet and technological changes, the leading Gujarati newspapers published from Gujarat, the Gujarat Samachar and the Sandesh, decided to bring out Bombay editions. It was followed by the Gujarati newspaper of the nationally largest Dainik Bhaskar chain, namely Divya Bhaskar, as also the Gujarati Midday. In the next 3 decades, Samachar would lose its premier position in the increasingly crowded marketplace. While its competitors print multiple editions from various cities of Gujarat or have the backing of powerful national newspaper chains, like in the case of the Divya Bhaskar, Samachar is published now only from Mumbai after it recently stopped publication from Ahmedabad. According to the statistics released by the Audit Bureau of Circulations of India, the average qualifying sales for the period July to December 2019 for the Divya Bhaskar was 7,92,022, while Mumbai Samachar was at 57,957. Despite this grim market scenario, the Samachar continues to be published regularly in print and now in a very smart digital avatar. During the pandemic, no member of its 150-strong staff has been retrenched by the management. It may have lost some of its commercial rationale, but yet remains healthy and vibrant. The credit for its survival in recent times is almost entirely attributable to the benevolence of the Kama family, who regard themselves as trustees of this institution. In the era of the breaking news, what then remains the unique selling proposition of the Samachar? Under Nilesh Dave, the present editor, the newspaper has begun to focus greatly on civic, municipal, and socio-religious issues affecting mainly the Gujarati and Jain communities. It has become a mouthpiece to address the woes of the owners of small and medium enterprises in Mumbai. Fardunji Marasban's tradition of the Samachar being a merchant's newspaper is very much alive. While it steadfastly retains its political neutrality, its editorials have become more scathing and the undertone at times a little shrill. Some of its exclusive stories have become spicier. This is in accordance with the tastes of its present readership. English, increasingly being the preferred medium of instruction across all classes of society in Mumbai, has resulted in the young being unable to read Gujarati. This is one of the greatest challenges before newspapers like the Samachar. Hence, the Samachar runs occasional campaigns for reviving Gujarati as a language through contests and competitions and appealing to the pride of the Gujarati persona. In a very strange manner, the proliferation of social media has helped the Samachar. People now buy it not so much for the news, which they garner from much better and faster sources anyway, but for its views and opinion, as well as for social and religious stories which are not in the public domain. Editorially, the Samachar displays no evident bias in favor of any political party. In the last decade, however, one does find some dissipation of its staid exterior. The language at times is a bit colorful, and that occasional sensational story, particularly if it is an exclusive, makes its columns more interesting. In the struggle to remain relevant, its famed sobriety is being gradually shed. Competitors having access to unlimited resources and national networks, the younger generation unable to read Gujarati, the onslaught of digitalization, are the many challenges which pose an existential threat to a newspaper like the Samachar. World over, venerable newspapers are dying. On the other hand, the third generation of the Kama family continues to provide benign protection and shelter to this institution. It is believed that the fourth generation of the Kama family may also be interested in carrying forward this tradition of trust. Thus, it will surprise not many if the Mumbai Samachar continues to survive, whether in printed or in digital form, for many more years to come. It is no longer a mere newspaper. Like the morning cup of tea and the long surviving marriage, the Mumbai Samachar has become a habit. Thank you. I am very grateful to the Mumbai Asiatic Society for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, we now have the throw open for question answers. So you can either unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat box. Of course, there are lots of compliments to you, sir, about an excellent talk, which is chronologically well framed, well researched and informative, certainly worthy of publication, riveting, beautiful flowing language, applause, amazing depth of information, inspirational history of great revered publication, amazing research. So all compliments, but we would also like some questions if you'd like to ask.
Last session, when a bill was being pushed through, same people have allegedly recorded this. Now this is all actually against the rules of the Rajya Sabha. Now let me tell you this also, Dr. Rangana. So this is highly inappropriate, but still, it was done, recorded, pushed out on Twitter so that the media would pick it up, and done all by parliamentarians who are supposed to. At least that's what they tell us.
I think this is something else.
They say they do.
I think Veera Udvadia has raised her hand. Would you like to ask something? Or maybe it's a mistake, yeah.
May I ask?
Yeah, please.
Have you ever had in the Bombay Samachar troubles with the government over newsprint restrictions, and there used to be in the 70s and 80s an entire black market in newsprint. Hello?
Ramesh, can you be a little more louder?
I can't hear sir, ma'am.
No, but he's not speaking. I think he's not heard your question.
No, he's muted, ma'am.
No, I am unmuted.
Okay.
I couldn't follow your question. Something about black market in newsprint.
Did the newspaper ever face a crisis of newsprint? Many newspapers faced that, I think, in the 70s and 80s with very severe restrictions on how much newsprint they could buy.
Yes, indeed, I recollect it was so.
And how did you keep the newspaper afloat during those days?
I really don't know what the struggle was, but I do remember even when I was a journalist working with the Samachar from 77, that there was this crisis, and even earlier to that. And then it got resolved in the last few years. But I do not know the exact details.
There is a question from Professor Nita Khantekar. Two Parsis got converted to Christianity under the influence of John Wilson. Did the paper cover this news?
Sorry?
Madhu, you'll have to repeat the question because someone was speaking from behind, so just repeat the question, please.
Okay, the question is that two Parsis got converted to Christianity under the influence of John Wilson. Did this newspaper cover it?
I really wouldn't know. I haven't come up, whatever sources I have examined and seen, I am aware about this two Christians being, two Parsis being converted. It's a very well-known chapter in Parsi history, but I don't know whether the Samachar covered it or not. It should have.
There is another question from Ankur. I missed half of the lecture, but could you please also mention about the Kama residence at Malabar Hill, which was a very beautiful bungalow?
That was their personal residential house, which had nothing to do with the Samachar.
There is another question from Deepak Devaria. Thank you so much. Can you tell us what happened to the sons and descendants of Fardunji Marzaban?
One of his grandsons was associated with the Jame Jamshed, which is, as I mentioned, the second largest, the second oldest continuously published newspaper. It was founded in 1832, just 10 years after. And I think there are people on this, from what I saw the names, the present owners and descendants of that family, perhaps who could throw light, like Ardeshir Dubash.
There is another question from Somashekar Sundaresan. Can you speak about the current challenges faced by language media and how they are coping with it.
Obviously, the greatest challenge is that the constituency or the readership has shrunk quite a bit, because with the onslaught of social media, the young hardly read print media and newspapers. And even if they do, they prefer to read in English. As a result of which, it's only the older generation, at least that is true as far as the cities are concerned. So the vernacular press is facing a very fast eroding constituency.
Any other question, audience?
We have more time. Would you like to tell us some anecdotes, anything more you would like to talk about the Samachar or your experience whilst working over there as a journalist?
I was there for a short while after the emergency was lifted and the Janata Party came to power. And I do remember that the Legislative Assembly elections, which were held sometime in 1978, was very extensively covered by the Samachar in a very unique way, which was not there earlier, with some very interesting and provocative interviews with the candidates, etc. And also, at that time, Mr. Daruwala was the editor, who was in the forefront of the Parsi reform movement. And he was instrumental in single-handedly bringing about a lot of reforms relating to the Bombay Parsi Panchayat, as well as on various religious issues. So he was a very free and frank espouser of the liberal cause. And I assisted him in writing the Parsi column, which appeared both in English and Gujarati. And after him, I continued it for about a decade or so, up to about 2012. So it was a very a friendly atmosphere. Those were great times because the emergency had just been lifted. So it was like a whiff of fresh air. And it was very interesting. And when I had to ultimately leave, it was quite a difficult choice.
There is another question from Nirban Govind Singh. I heard that Mahatma Gandhi was also an editor for a short period. Is this true?
Mahatma Gandhi was a very friendly with Belgamwala. There are records to suggest that. And he used to often drop in for a cup of tea during those times in the 20s and 30s to meet Belgamwala and also later on to meet Mancheji Kama. That is not only recorded but also narrated by various people, including Manchi Kama, who passed away, and Melli Kama have also mentioned this quite often. So it is true. Whether he may have written an editorial or something, or he may have acted as like a editor for a day or an acting editor, or he may have participated in some leader writing.
There is another question that the Sunday article Parsi Tari RC, why was it discontinued?
So Parsi Tari RC was actually started by my father as a columnist sometime in 1950. even before he became the editor in 1961. It appeared only in Gujarati, not in English. As a matter of fact, it was a bone of contention between the Kamas and my father that it should also have an English version, and my father maintained that a Gujarati newspaper will not have English content. And so the Kamas respected that, and until he passed away, the column appeared only in Gujarati. When Daruwala became the editor and he started editing the column, then the column was turned into an English column, so that it had a much wider readership amongst Parsis, very few of whom can now read and write Gujarati, as one can imagine. As a result of which, that column became very popular. And there was a sister column on Wednesdays called Parsi Prakash in Gujarati, which were very ably edited. And then sometime between 2002 to up to about 2012, I edited the column. It was not so much a written column like the ones I do in Parsiana, which I did in Parsiana, but more a sort of a collation of news and views and developments on various fronts. Why it closed down in 2012? I think the most polite answer would be fatigue.
Were there any accolades received by the paper from the then British government?
Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, maybe you came in a bit late, but the Marquis of Hastings, as I said, was a great supporter. Mount Stuart Elphinstone was the subscriber with 50 copies at 24 rupees a copy. They were very supportive, very encouraging, and the Samachar had a great relationship with the British. Only maybe during Belgamwala's time, when it must have, that is sometime between 1921 and 33, and maybe after that also, Samachar and Chronicle, particularly the Bombay Chronicle, were quite vigorous in support of the freedom movement. As a matter of fact, I have come across an issue of 1937, I forget the exact date, in which on the front page of the newspaper, there is a photo of a young boy holding a placard saying, "Dump this constitution which smacks of slavery." And these were the headlines. This was in 1937. So there were no punches were pulled really. But initially, of course, the attitude was very encouraging. And of course, in those initial days, they must have maintained restraint. The Samachar criticized, I was told by those old records, the financial policies of the government as to how much India was losing out, etc. And that was tolerated. But of course, at that time, there was no talk of any dominion status and self-government and all that.
How can the youngsters contribute to keep the tradition of this wonderful newspaper alive? Your message, please.
By reading it. So these newspapers, which are institutions, have to be given encouragement. And as I said, that few will now read for the news, but there are several things. I begin my day every day by first reading the Bombay Samachar. And this is not out of any sentimental reason, but I do read certain portions, including death intimation and obituaries and stuff like that. Plus, there are some very interesting articles and news which is not covered by other mainstream newspapers about the Gujarati and Jain communities, etc., which appears as exclusive. So it's quite interesting, at least for me. The youngsters who can read Gujarati ought to subscribe and ought to encourage papers. At 10 rupees a copy, it's a trifle expensive, but the digital version, it's a very smart digital version. It has just been reinvented only about a couple of months ago, and it's a very user-friendly interface, and it's an impressive digital version. Plus a wealth of articles in the Sunday Weekly and all. So it's not so much for the news, but the views and the happenings in the community, particularly Gujaratis, Jains, etc., or even Boris. Unfortunately, there is now nothing about the Parsis for the last few years.
Sharnaz, I think you had something to say.
No, what if at all, was there any relationship between the Bombay Samachar and the Chronicle? Or it was just, printed in the same premises, or was there some type of a relation?
So the Bombay Chronicle was founded in 1879. Then around the First World War, there were two Sobtani brothers, if my memory is not incorrect, one Usman Sobtani and his brother, and they ran the Bombay Chronicle. And around the time when Kama bought the Samachar from, and at some point of time, Belgamwala acquired some interest. Although the Sobtani brothers continued to run the Chronicle, Belgamwala had certainly acquired some interest in the Chronicle, because money was owed both by the Samachar and the Chronicle to Kama. As a matter of fact, the story is that Kama had gone to meet the Sobtani brothers, and there was a very heated argument, and Belgamwala dropped in and said, "What's happening?" And whereupon Belgamwala guaranteed that he will pay up everything, and which of course he failed to do. And then finally, even the Samachar started owing money to the Kamas. Then apparently, so Kama wrote off mentally, saying that this is never going to be paid, and stopped supplies. Then one day, apparently at the Ripon Club, over lunch, Belgamwala himself brought up the topic and apologized to Kama and said, I don't have the money. It was some 14 lakhs at that time, which was a huge sum. Why don't you just take over both the newspapers? So Kama acquired in 1933 both Bombay Samachar and Bombay Chronicle.
Okay.
And it remained from 33 onwards, it was in the same fold. And then around 57, 58, somewhere around that, it was closed.
Thank you.
I presume there are no more questions. So on behalf of the Mumbai Research Center, I would like to thank Mr. Burjis Desai for this rather engrossing talk on the history of the hugely successful Mumbai Samachar. So your talk clearly brought out the importance of the idea of freedom of press, which is sorely required today. It seems that the Mumbai Samachar is a model newspaper that has managed to survive for 2 centuries of political and technological changes because of sobriety of opinion and independence of views combined with a certain amount of flexibility. Thank you so much, sir. And I would also like to thank our audience. It is because of them that the MRC is able to organize such talks from time to time. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.